Ironically, this panel is reconciling supply and demand, and we obviously ran out of supply of time, despite the demand on the first panel. But again, the second part of the three is now looking at questions about how do we adjust the demand for talent. We touched on that briefly in the previous panel, but we've got 4 speakers who are going to be looking at how technology might be able to shape the demand for the skills that armed forces need in the future. So the 4 panelists, again, I won't do justice to their biographies, so please forgive me, but I will keep this as brief as I can so you hear from them. Vincent Vuillard, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Hive and Futurework Studios. Laurence Lafont, who is the Vice President Strategic Industries for Google. Wouter Trumpy, who is the Chief Architect Public Sector and Education for Salesforce. And then André Pietri, who is a fantastic name, the JEDI Foundation. Isn't that a great term? I'm going to be posing questions to each of them in turn. And then I do hope we have an opportunity to offer the floor to you to pose questions to the audience. Sorry, you are the audience, sorry, to the panel. So Vincent, we hear that many armed forces see the prospects of automation and AI as a way of reducing the number of people they need. But given your experience, how realistic is that as an expectation, do you think?
Yeah, thanks, Paul, and hi, everyone. Nice to be here. Look, I think AI, we've never seen AI as good as we're seeing it right now. So I think most people now understand what AI is capable of. I mean, who hasn't used ChatGPT? Wrong audience. Well, it's great. But my point is we've all experienced that. So we can see that a lot of the tasks we do every day in our work, and I would say for the armed forces, I would want to divide that into the work on the field or in operations, right? And the work in the staff, general staff, like état-major, right? Which is very different and more like organizations that we work with in the civilian world. And I think there is an opportunity to really streamline the type of work that is being done. You know, producing reports, analyzing, making decisions. I think that is an aspect that probably most armed forces can leverage. And I think yes, there's an element of how do we do that with less people. But in fact, I would challenge that and say, what can you do with the people you have when those people are more productive? In other words, like our research, and I remember when I was at McKinsey several years ago, we did a piece of research probably like 6 years ago around automation. And so we looked at all the jobs that existed in the world. Then we extracted all the tasks from those jobs, right? And from that we said, from all technology available, how much of that can be done by a machine? And the answer was around 80%. Which led to people believing that robots were taking our jobs or coming for our jobs, which we all know isn't true, or not to that extent anyway. When you reaggregate that back into the jobs we do, only 10% of jobs are fully automatable, right? We understand that, and it's fine. The 90% that are not fully automatable is the interesting fact. And especially with AI, our research indicates that around 15 to 30% of people's day-to-day can be automated. So then you have someone, right, who can have a day free up within the week. Of course, it's not like a day like a Monday or a Friday, it would be too easy. And it's not spread evenly across the organization. And so I think that's the real key to say, okay, now that we have this freed up capacity, right, what can we do with this? And organizations that say, well, look, we have people in roles that have more skills, interest, passion, experience than what the job demands every day. Same thing with the organization. The armed forces is no different, and I would say even more because people are moving so much within their career that people have more of that. In the same thing, the organization has more challenge, demand, etc. than what the fixed roster caters for, right? And so if you let that happen and people can start to decide where else could I be helping others to deliver value, to share knowledge, to help others grow, etc., then you have a different culture and you have a different output, you know, productivity, engagement, etc., which leads back to what the panel was talking about before, right? So I think the armed forces are not behind. I think in terms of the field and the operation force, you know, definitely they've been implementing some sort of robotics and AI, I would say, from the early days. I think on the other side of the coin, that's where the potential lies today. And that's why I was like, if you don't know about ChatGPT, I mean, surely you have to have a look at this, right? But of course, it's a point, like I think we were seeing a few days ago, the French Minister for the Armed Forces said that France wants to be the number 3 in the world with AI. Right, I don't know if you've probably seen that. It's for you guys. And so the military is going to inherit this. It's going to be based in a famous French school that some people went to in Palaiseau. But that's what we're talking about here.
Thank you. And back to that culture question and some of the organizational implications. So, Laurence, I wonder if I can turn to you. What do you see as some of the organizational implications for those who are wishing to harness technology to deliver the kind of productivity that Vincent was talking about?
So, I'm going to have to shout. Yes, yeah. Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Well, first, it's very interesting to see that we jumped straight into the AI topic while we are talking about supply and demand in the workforce and talents, right? And I think it's a very good example of what we are all living those days in our organizations. By the way, for those who haven't tested ChatGPT, maybe because you have tested Gemini, which is the Google version of Général. I just couldn't.
That's right.
Other products are available.
For that one. So, but joke apart, I think for me, this wave we are in with this technology is just reminding us that innovation and disruption matters, right? And I think in all organizations we are in, and certainly in the armed force, I mean, it's very true. You need to ensure you have the superiority in terms of what you deliver, in terms of how you work, in terms of the technology you bring into the field, because your competition in the business side, your enemies on the warfield side are not going to wait for you, and certainly when we see all the threats coming in the cyberspace, it is very, very true. So you need to be at the edge. You need to be at the forefront of these innovations. Now, as organizations, we start seeing a massive acceleration, especially in the field of artificial intelligence, which is touching everybody, right? So when I'm at Google, so obviously we are living that every day, but don't be mistaken. Also for us, it's a big change, right? It goes super fast. I mean, look at ChatGPT or Gemini 1 year ago and now. Day and night, right? What you can do with those technologies. So all organizations are going to have to adapt very, very rapidly. And I think this notion of pace of change and how you really shift the way you work, your culture, I think the previous panel touched on that a bit, is going to be super critical to your survivability in the future. Just to take a few examples, right? And Vincent, you mentioned automation. So great, we're going to have more time to do more interesting things as human beings, as workers, thanks to those technologies. We have new jobs being created. I mean, you might have heard about these prompt engineers, right, in the field of AI. I mean, completely new kind of job that is going to be very necessary in the future if you really want to take the best of these capabilities. Take a field maintenance technician, right, in the armed force. Tomorrow, your job is going to be totally different thanks to AI. You will have technology that is going to give you information on potential damages, on equipments which are in the field that you don't need anymore to go and visit, but you'll get the information coming back to you and telling you what you have to do or giving you advice on, ensuring that this equipment can be left in the field, in the battlefield, as long as possible. So another example on, when you start, you're on the battleground, you get access to paper information very quickly in your fingertips, or actually on your mobile equipment. You will be able to extract that information, translate it, summarize it in one go, and take actions, right? So it completely changes the way people are going to work and operate, and you need, as organizations, to really take that into account on how you prepare your workforce for that. Back to your question, I think, we always say, okay, we need more talent, we need new people. You can't change, drastically your organization in one go. I mean, we talked about generations. I even heard that 21%, I think, of young people. This is worrying, right? I mean, don't want. So you also have to do with the people who are already working, luckily for us, right? And so how do you ensure that you train people? For me, continuous learning, continuous training is going to be absolutely crucial to have the organizations evolve and embrace those new capabilities. And second thing, I think, is also on the culture side. You really need to shift and it's not an easy thing to do, right? But shift the culture of organizations to be much more agile, much more open in terms of how you get people being able to move from one job to another. In our world, that would be, from a technical job to maybe a business job or a marketing job or an administrative job. So having these capabilities to really shift from one job to another, this is going to be crucial if you really want to start getting effectively much more agility in your organization. Last thing I think is also touching, and Vincent, you mentioned that, right? Touching the technology, understanding it. We ran very recently a hackathon with the Defense Technology and Science Laboratory of the Ministry of Defense in the UK. Getting people to really think about what can I do with that technology? How is it going to really change my job? It's super critical, I think, in those days. And that's how you get the organizations to really evolve on their own without having to get, massive talents coming from outside. Of course, it's important to have talents coming from outside, but it cannot be the only answer to this supply-demand problem.
Thank you. And that's a really neat segue to Wouter. And given where you come from on the education side, a lot of the conversation in the first panel and this one is about the fungibility of skills, how we need to continually retrain, reskill, and reallocate talents we have. Could you talk about how technology can play its part in that?
Yes, I'll do that. But before I do that, maybe a short introduction of what Salesforce does, because we are not a consumer technology company. We're an enterprise company, and we help organizations connect to people. So we deliver solutions where organizations engage in recruitment, or when they sell something, or when they communicate to somebody, or when they train people. So making sure students are successful and that they get the right skills to be able to be successful in the world after they graduate from the university. And we also do that for a number of armed forces branches in both the European Union and in the United States. So that's a little bit about Salesforce. Now back to your question, Paul. Technology is a means to an end, right? And we've heard before in the panel that it's all about people and it's all about culture. And maybe the most important thing is also, if you keep on doing what you've always been doing, then you will not be the winner in the competition for talent, right? It requires a change, and technology can drive or help that change. What we say at Salesforce is that the solutions we deliver should make sure that people have a fun and meaningful job, right? So making sure that they get the tools to do their job in an easier way, and also the tools to build up new skills, right? So it's, like you said, Laurence, it is no longer going to be the case that you are going to send somebody to a 3-year technical training to learn how to replace a component on a rolling asset, right? On a tank. What might be a solution is augmenting a person in the field with a device that tells them, hey, take a picture of what is broken, and we will give you tips on how to fix that. So that you can do that yourself, and you don't need to bring this asset into a shop or do something else. What I also see in the education space, I talk a lot with universities, and you see that they are moving from large, long credential programs, like a 4-year college degree, to something they call micro-credentials. Mm-hmm. So AI gives you the possibility to tailor an education program both to what is needed for a job to be successful in the market, and to combine small courses to deliver those skills, as well as to adjust learning to the style of the student. Right? Not everybody likes to sit in a big auditorium like this, take notes, and then take a multiple choice exam. I personally love that because I was very good at it. I like listening. But nowadays, people, they want to see a video, or they want to get hands-on with things. And without technology, that is going to be impossible. So yeah, I think that's one of the things where technology, AI can make a difference.
Thank you. So technology both as a driver, but also as an enabler of the response to the pressures that keeping up with technology delivers. Thank you. Andre, turning to you, if I may. We heard from the first panel about partnerships and wider talent pools. How do you broaden that? And certainly my experience in the UK in the reserves is the traditional regular force model of supporting those who are only doing it part-time is difficult. How do you see technology playing a part in that broadening of the talent pool, but also then supporting the differences that wider group of people might bring to the organization?
Thank you very much, and hello everybody. So since you triggered the interest about JEDI, just 10 seconds on what we do, because that might not be clear for all. We are funding research programs on advanced technologies, because we're very concerned that France and Europe and at a whole is currently losing the technological battle. And it was interesting to see that even Google now is basically the incumbent and tries to say, oh, by the way, we also have a product. So it's actually it's an optimistic view. Is basically that we're living a world where cards can be reshuffled all the time. So what we need is to focus on the next big thing in Europe, the next big thing in material, synbio, AI, etc. Two things to answer your question. First, let's come back to the facts. I mean, just some numbers from the last couple of days in France. First, I heard that the French army is short of 2,000 people for the first time a bit of its history in its recruitment plan. We heard a report on the French initial, I mean, the west point of France called Saint-Cyr, if I can compare that like that, saying that they are at the limit of actually training junior officers so that they would not be able to bring in the new competence that are needed in the ramp up. I also heard that there will be 15,000 military helping on the Olympic Games, and since we're a little bit among us, we can be a little bit straightforward. Is it really the best use of armed forces at the moment where we have so much strain? I mean, it's a question mark. That's point number one. Point number two, let's also take a step back. We had world wars, which was about mass. We had the last 30 years, which was about specialty, expeditionary forces. Now we see, especially with what's going on in Ukraine, that we need both of it, mass and expertise. And it's geometric for those who've done a little bit of math. That means it's exponentially complex. I think that is the reason why we have these interesting discussions. In order to have more time for the question, I just want to leave you, and answering your question, two concepts. One is this concept, I mean, we talk a lot about technology, dual-use technologies. I think we need to go into this concept of dual-use talent. This capacity of having a back and forth between the core military force and I would say the rest of the society, for many reasons. Number one, obviously, access to skills. We will not be able in the armed forces to recruit because of salary, because of type of careers, because of just inclination. You mentioned that there was just the announcement on the AI initiative by the minister, which is a great news. But the risk is also always that when you create something new, you actually don't attract new people, you just empty the existing. So I see a general here from a high officer from the DGA and so on. So the risk is obviously that you empty the cyber and AI competence of the other parts of the armed forces. So how do you tap into the talent which is outside? Point number two, when I see that in some European countries, luckily in France it's a bit less the case, you have like 5, 6, 7% of young people who just consider that they're able to fight for the country. We need to also create this, what we call esprit de défense in France, and instill it much more in the rest of the society. And that can go with back and forth without going back to, I would say, a traditional military service. There's a good example in Israel. I don't know if Israel has been super successful in the last couple of months on a few things, but on one thing it's interesting is their famous unit 8200, which is the cyber unit, and which is recruiting out of military service, so relatively easy for them, but then they actually encourage people to go out, often to set up their own startup or to work in the industry. They make it very easy in order to bring them back when they need them, this back and forth. So this has one very big consequence, is that this dual-use talent concept needs to be here with a very new, agile work contract. I give you one example, and again, we are among us. I just joined the operational reserve in France. Since now I signed my contract in August, it took me literally 16 months. And since, Paul, you only pronounced the last part of my name, which is the Corsican part, all those in the room know Corsicans are stubborn. You really need to be stubborn to go into the reserve today, because you have like obstacles everywhere. I think that is something relatively easy, low-hanging fruit is transforming that. And the second concept to finish on that is the knowledge management. We heard a lot about AI on empowering, making productivity. But what is today, especially generative AI, is basically tapping into the existing knowledge. It's not very good at predicting, but it's very good at tapping into. So knowledge management, being able to know who in your population, who in your armed forces has this skill, this passion, this is probably something for HR management that we really need to transform, because sometimes we're surprised of people we know, but actually they have a skill, a passion that we're not aware of. So using that tool to really tapping into everybody's skills, passion, and interest, I think could be transformative.
Thank you. I will ask panelists to respond, or if there's anything they would wish to add before we take questions. But in terms of questions, if anyone does have a question, feel free to put it into the app, and through some magic of technology that I feel woefully ill-equipped to comment on this panel, it will appear in front of me. Or if you wish, you can do as I would, which is just put your hand up and we'll get a microphone to you. But while you're thinking or typing your question, I will just come back to the panelists if there's anything you would wish to respond to. So,
let me go first. So I like the concept of this multi-talented or different roles, right? So how do you then keep people engaged? Because I think that's a challenge when they are doing their, let's say, tour outside of defense, right? Because the big risk is if you have a flexible contract that they say, "Ooh, I like this, I'm not coming back," because I enjoy my job in private life. So it is key to also then, when you have that concept, to continuously communicate and talk about what do you need while you're doing your civilian job to make it interesting for you to come back, right? Because I know, at Salesforce, I have a lot of colleagues that are veterans that did military service, because you all, thank you for your service, you have the best talents, and the talents we as commercial enterprise need to be successful. And some of my colleagues also give back by being in the reserves, like you said, but it's not easy, right? So engaging through technology and making it clear what they get when they come back is also super important, and tailoring that to the role of the individual.
Yeah, I think, definitely based on still not. Yeah, based on what you said, I think you can't force people, right, to stay or to go. In some careers today you can, but I think to get the best out of people, you need to give that freedom and that choice, right? And so completely align that, we need to find a way to create these, to remove these boundaries, right? And to ensure that people can eventually have an experience, in one part of the society, in another part, and so on and so forth. Actually, we were talking about the EMEA, which has been founded a couple of days ago, and the person who's going to lead that organization is coming from Google. So it can be done. And you can attract, and I mean, I'm super proud, you know, to see that kind of move, because it shows that obviously even young talents are very attracted about contributing and what you can do with AI technology in the field of army. So that's a good example that I think should really inspire all of us. We also need to do our job on the, you know, more private side of the society and the companies, right? Because I'm not sure if tomorrow I was saying, okay, I want to go for 6 months, you know, have an experience or give back in the army, I would be able to do that. That wouldn't be that easy either, right? So I think it's really a society challenge that we need to tackle together and find a new way to create those opportunities for people to really, you know, test something else and contribute elsewhere. And that's, I think, the best way to also create the stimulation and evolution in terms of skills that we were very much touching on earlier.
Yeah, before we go to questions, I think the first, I actually think that we're in a really good time right now. There are plenty of opportunities, and you know, today we're talking about AI. I think human intelligence is actually what's going to be very interesting. I think AI, you know, will continue, and it's exponential. A lot of you have done math, so you know that, you know, our brain is not wired exponentially. So when it goes exponential, we don't know where AI is going to go. AI does. But what's interesting, and it was great to hear from Mark just before, the first element is recognizing that there is something that needs to change, right? And acknowledging that you've done, right? And say, hey, you know, just changing around the edges is not going to work. Just changing everything isn't either, right? And you've said that brilliantly before. And I think that starts there, right? I think the interesting thing for me and what I've seen with a lot of clients I work with around the world is connection, right? So you talked about it, Mark, as well, on like, you know, people not having dinner together. Like they're not connected in person. But what is the equivalent that we could do digitally, right? And I'm not just talking about being on Slack or Teams or equivalent, right? I'm saying, right, or Google equivalent. But my point is, messaging is great, but that's not it, right? And so when you start connecting people, right, that's where you start tapping into, I didn't know you did that before. Hey, I'm working on this project. I'm just saying I need some help here, and you see that and come and help me, right? When you start having that culture, you solve a lot of the issues that we talked about before. So interesting times, but it starts with what you said, acknowledging it.
Yeah, I like this I'm going to make an exception on this one. I like this American concept of having a tour of duty. I mean, you have a tour duty in Iraq, or you have a tour duty in government. I know so many people who are currently in think tanks or industry, and this revolving door concept, which has a very bad press here in Europe, I think is something that we need to have much more. Something which is slightly different, but which probably explains a lot of the problems we have at the European level. Sorry, and a little bit diverging is, do you know that all the DGs, that means those who are running the big silos in the European Commissions, now all have 25 years and more at the Commission. That means they have not seen the rest of the world, which probably is the problem. Because most of the problems today need to have these different angles, the military angle, the economic angle, the social angle. And I think this back and forth is not only good to tap into talent, is probably going to make us also more accurate in the understanding of the problems that we're facing. And on that one, I think technology can definitely help. It should not only be Amazon, who knows better than us when we go on Amazon what we want to buy, is okay. I dream of a portal of the DRHMD, so the HR director of the ministry. When you connect on it and say, Andre, oh, you were with us 3 years ago, and do you know that this is happening, and have you thought about that? And this is the way to engage. And then contracts, which also are adapted to, I mean, now if you don't recruit somebody, a good person in 2-3 weeks, he's already gone somewhere else, especially in topics like AI or cyber. So if the process already takes 6 months, you're right on target at the beginning, but you have lost the game in almost all the cases. So I think this back and forth, which also puts a lot of strain. I see these young and a bit less young officers in the room. It's a new style of management also. We need to of leadership. You need to manage people who have probably different interests.
Did you want to come back in, Laurence?
No, I completely agree on that. I think, we've again, I just want to ensure the message on it's not only an army challenge, right? It's across the entire society, right? So we are all in the same journey, and we see effectively the urgency to really go fast. Opening, the opportunity for people to do something else than their day-to-day job, even in their organizations, is super critical. We have this so-called, 20% project at Google, for instance, where you give the opportunity to talents to do something else, to contribute to something else. And I can tell you the impact it has on their efficiency, on what they do, on their motivation at work, on them giving back is massive. So there's a lot of tools and things you can do to really create this, again, environment where people thrive and want to test new things.
Thank you. We've got a number of questions, and again, ironically,